good afternoon. My name's Wojciech Kovář, and I will be presenting joint work with Miloš Jakubíček on how we in Brno use the Prague dependency tree bank, and actually present our experience, positive and negative with it. Then I will show some outline. Firstly, I will say about something about who we are and what we do in Brno. Then how we actually exploit the corpus, the Prague dependency tree bank. Then I will talk about some problems that we discovered during our work with PDT. Then I will illustrate the problems with some particular examples, and then propose some outlines of solutions. Because it's a joint work, it will be like a two-man show. So maybe my colleague will be interrupting me during the presentation. Feel free to interrupt me as well if you don't understand anything, or if you discuss some particular problem immediately. No problem. Okay, so sorry. So what we do in Brno at Masaryk University at Faculty of Informatics, we have a natural language processing center which has about 15 employees, about 50 students, and some PhD students. Main areas of interest are corpus linguistics. Maybe you have heard about the tool Sketch Engine that we actually have developed. We are working also on Czech morphology. This is the case of tools ICA and MICA. We are interested in parsing of Czech, particularly as2. Regarding parsing, we have tools called Synt and Set for syntactic analysis, and mainly in this work, this is because it's in red. Mainly in this work, we exploit the Prague dependency tree bank. We also are working on logical analysis of the Czech language, which is based on transparent intentional logic, and it's based upon or above the syntactic analysis. Also, we do some computer lexicography and this is the case of DEB applications. Generally, we focus rather on practical and deliverable applications rather than some theoretical results. This is because we are Faculty of Informatics, and the applications are actually more important for us and for our say lecturers than the theory. So this is our background. Projects that are relevant to this talk. Mainly you should know about the Synt system for syntactic analysis of Czech that is being developed at our faculty for more than 10 years. It's based on a phrase structure grammar, actually context-free grammar with some contextual actions, and the base is an efficient variant of a chart parser algorithm. Now, in the last 2 years, we are working on the new parser, which is based on pattern matching system, and can, as opposite to this parser, which produces some phrase structures, and the dependency output is just kind of side product. This parser can natively produce dependency trees, and we exploited the Prague dependency tree bank quite heavily in development and testing of this parser. Well, as I said, it is it is rule-based, so the development went like we had a look at the data, and we tried to construct manually some set of rules that would well approximate the data in the corpus, namely the Prague dependency tree bank. In the last half a year, we have a new project that aims at phrases annotation. We have a corpus that is manually morphologically tagged, and on top of this corpus, we want to build some syntactic annotation, not really trees, but rather say flat structures like noun phrases, prepositional phrases, verb phrases, or verb groups, and clauses. We want to do this annotation in a semi-automatic way. This means that we take an output of the parser or multiple parsers and let the annotators just decide if the particular output is correct or incorrect. So this will make the annotation cheaper and more efficient. Maybe we missed something, but in this phase of the project, we actually don't care. The project, as it is planned, the project will continue with mapping these phrases to complex valency frames that are available in our dictionary of verb valencies for Czech, and also semantic classes are available in this dictionary, so we can get some kind of shallow ontology of Czech based on these phrases and based on our lexicon. So, but this is planned in the future. These are plans for the future, but the relevancy of this project to PDT is that we tried to use the PDT data as some gold standard for extracting these structures, and we are also using the structures for parsing evaluation. We let our annotators annotate some sets of sentences on these phrases, and then compared this annotation to output from the parsers. So this is a way. This is an alternative way how to evaluate parsing accuracy. The last project that is related to PDT is anaphora resolution. This is work of our colleague, who is not here, and he provided just a very little information to us. So I will not talk too much about anaphora resolution. I will say just a few basic things that we understood from him. Okay, so what PDT means for us? As you know, we are an external site, working site, and well, first of all, it is the biggest source of Czech syntactically annotated data. This is unescapable. It is very valuable because it's created by skilled domain experts, we mean linguists. We use it as a reference corpus, for example, in the case of parser development. We are looking for the right way how to do the syntactic analysis. Actually, you have in the PDT some kind of reference, which means when we should decide how to handle particular phenomenon, we may decide according to PDT. We are, of course, using this for testing parsing results, for extracting some statistical models that we use in the parsers, and actually in general we use it for extraction of all kinds of useful syntactic data. This relates to the anaphora resolution task. Our colleague exploits the markup of anaphoric expressions on the T layer, and he has some set of tools that can be used for anaphora resolution, and he of course uses the tektogramaticke layer of PDT for training and testing these tools. Well, in the particular projects, this will be very quick. In the synth parser, we measure coverage and do some testing on the PDT data. Basically, we don't choose the dependency annotation because the outputs are too different. In the case of set parser development, we used the PDT as a gold standard for training, meaning that we looked at the data and manually constructed some set of rules, and for testing against the data. For phrases annotation, we tried to extract phrases and clauses from the data, from the dependency trees, and tried to get some gold standard phrases. We encounter some problems that will be discussed later. And in anaphora resolution, again, it's extracting anaphora information, basically data for testing, data for actually to be able to run the algorithms, and also as in the previous cases, it's used for training and testing of the tools. Okay, so now I will move to the second part of the presentation that deals with some problems that we encountered when working with PDT. I would like to emphasize that the problems are mainly related to the particular applications. We are the guys that do development. So we are basically programmers, and so the problems are rather from the technical point of view than anything else. We want basically the resource to be usable, which means as straightforward that the usage should be as straightforward as possible, and ideally for all particular applications. This is of course not possible, but maybe the situations can be improved in several ways to say get closer to our ideal. This is mainly for discussion, for later discussion about this, and I think we can talk about that. As I said, we don't want at all inform the theoretical background of the PDT. We are just interested in real usability of the resource that is connected to our particular project, and we think this could be important also for you as developers of PDT, as feedback from other people that work with it, mainly for discussion, to help identify some problems that are in the resource, and to help use PDT in the future by different people. Okay. So, problem number one that we encountered can be can be summarized as 2 extensive annotation manuals. I expect you know that manual for annotator for morphological layer has about 50 pages. For analytical layer, it's 300 pages, and for tektogramaticke layer, it's 1,200 of pages. This is an approximate size of the PDF documents that can be downloaded from your pages. So there is a lots of exceptions and special cases described. Well, if you have some question or problem, just interrupt me. No problem in it. Okay. Well, there is described a lot of exceptions and special cases, and the main problem for an external user is that to understand the data and to use them, you must read it through and memorize it, so that you are aware of all these exceptions and special cases. We definitely agree that the language and especially Czech is very difficult, but this is a problem mainly for technical people who don't have a linguistic background. So this is not easy at all, even if it could seem so. Another thing that is related to it is the description granularity, which often goes beyond what most people, for example us, are able to distinguish. For example, in the annotation manual for T layer, in this section, one particular problem is explained. The particular problem is that the phrase zakladatel a prezident firmy, founder and president of the company, is analyzed in a completely different way than president a zakladatel firmy, president and the founder of the company. Well, as I said, I am one of those people who are actually not able to distinguish between these two. So even if I have read the paragraph about this thing about 3 times, I haven't understood it. So maybe it would be worth to revise the annotation, but I will be talking about it later. Maybe it will be worth to think about if it could be simplified, not having to read, not for the users to have to read hundreds of pages of manuals. I think the same, or in a slightly different way, but the same will hold for the annotators. We believe that they simply cannot remember 1,200 pages of manuals, and this must lead to errors and inconsistencies. And we are quite convinced that this actually leads to errors and inconsistencies, and I will show some examples later. Problem number 2 for us as developers of NLP tools is selection of sentences to the corpus. There are sentences, and there are quite many of them, that like the first 2 examples. 0, 0, 1, 1, 2, 1. It's some results of some sport matches, football matches. I don't know why. I don't know what. The second example is some I don't know, celery in the table or something like that. Both of these two are debatable if they can be considered as Czech sentences. We actually understand the reasons why these have been selected to be in the corpus, but we think they may cause problems in parsers training and testing, because such constructions behave in a completely different way than usual Czech sentences. Furthermore, it leads to more exception and special cases, because you have to decide and describe how to annotate such constructions, and this leads to more pages in manuals and more errors in the tree bank. Some questions for discussion. Do we really need those in the annotated corpus? Actually, we want to be able to analyze Czech sentences, not really all that we can find in the newspaper. And are the dependency structures actually meaningful for such sentences? This means, wouldn't it be better if we, for example, set 0:0 is one unit and analyze the unit as such? This is for discussion. This is no kind of objective true or something like that. At least we think there should be some kind of distinction between, say, Czech sentences and such structures, so that the sentences that have such structure that is debatable if it is Czech at all would be marked with some I don't know, some feature, or so that we when develop and test parser could say we don't want to evaluate our parser on these sentences. Well, I have actually said this. Our opinion is that such data do not really represent the language structure, and when developing the parser, there should be a special mode of this parser to handle such constructions, and another mode of the parser to analyze really Czech sentences as such. Problem number 3 relates to the formalism itself, can be said. It is the dependency formalism is simple, which is definitely good, but it introduces some requirements on the analysis that made the analysis not as simple as the formalism is. For example, there is a requirement that each token needs to have dependency, and as token, for example, each punctuation mark, each number is a token, which means that the formalism induces complicated structures on sequences of number and punctuation, which leads to to complicated structures on these constructions. Another problem of the dependency formalism is with marking coordination constructions. This is, I believe all of you know what is coordination in Czech. This is handled somehow, of course, in the PDT, but the way how this is done is kind of, well, I would say strange, but this is not true. It is not native. How do you say it? Yes, we will get to the examples later. Yeah.
But we think that the formalism as it is strong enough actually to express the syntactic structure and should be used in a way that actually doesn't need the H labels which are not present as output in all parsers. So this is our point.
Yeah, the coordinations are solved in PDT by dependency on the conjunctions expressions, and this brings up some problems. For example, with common expansion of the members of coordination, and to be able to read the tree in such case, you need the H labels, because otherwise you are not able to distinguish between part of coordination and the expansion of coordination. So this complicates actually reading the structures. Either you have in some graphical user interface, either you have labels for all the edges, or you don't have the labels and you are not able to read the structures easily because you are not able to distinguish between expansion and coordination member. Yes?
May I ask what you call label? Is it just a functor? Or
Yes, functor.
You don't do that. There's an annotative value saying member of coordination, yes, no. And the common modifier.
Okay, but yes. Okay. Thank you. But this is basically similar. Output of the of most of the parsers is simply unlabeled tree, right? So when you are comparing tree to tree, I'm just the development person. So I'm comparing what I do is comparing tree to tree, and for example, the typical problem is I'm staring at the tree and what is it there, and because I don't have the labels. What is it that the data are wrong, but the data are actually correct, but they are difficult to read. I need to. Yes, but
Right? I mean, maybe there is a way how to encode this into the formalism itself so that there is no external information needed. But that's not the way how it is done.
I think it's actually not possible. But the problem is that the really from the technical point of view, I have a parser and I want to evaluate it, and I have some output of the parser and some gold standard data from the PDT, and I am comparing tree to tree, and where my parser creates a mistake, and the output of the parser are just unlabeled trees. There are no labels, no markup of coordination H or dependency H. Not really.
Maybe we will skip and do the examples.
Okay. Well, basically, my point is that I'm trying to say that the output of the parser is unlabeled. There are no distinction between the coordination edges and dependency edges. I agree with you that it's necessary to divide these two, but you don't teach the parser to distinguish between them, or most of the current parsers are not taught to distinguish between these two. Okay, let's illustrate it later on the examples. Problem number 4 is the problem of extraction of phrases and other, say, flat syntactic structures. We would expect, again, as developers, that when we have syntactically annotated corpus, that it should be straightforward to extract particular, say, shallow parsing information, such as noun phrases, prepositional phrases, verb groups, or clauses. We found out that it is not easy or straightforward. We spent 2 days working on an algorithm for extraction of noun phrases from the dependency trees, such as in the Prague dependency tree bank. The algorithm is still not completely okay, but we are kind of satisfied with that. We measured some precision according to human annotations according to human annotation of these phrases, that the precision is circa 97.5. Well, some of this is flaws of our algorithm, but most of the rest, most of these 2.5% are actually annotation errors. So the algorithm is not completely okay, but say works well. But the point is not in our algorithm, yes or no or whatever. The problem is that it took 2 days. It's actually writing a shallow parser that would work with such precision on noun phrases could take about 2 weeks. So there is just a little gain of the annotated tree bank. We really think that from the technical point of view, it should be easy when we have syntactically annotated corpus. Just the point that. Sorry. Well, the recall was.
By precision.
Yes, the recall. The precision is the usual precision. We haven't measured a recall because well.
The point was to get noun phrases as precisely as we can. So we were not really interested to get all of them, but we wanted the phrases we get really to be noun phrases. So
this is
why precision was important.
This is dependent on the project.
Yeah.
We are actually doing the semi-automatic analysis for so that means that we take an output of the parser, or in this case output of the PDT, and we let the annotators decide correctness or incorrectness. So in this case, the recall is really hard to measure because we don't know. We are not able to extract all the phrases. This will be extra very hard work. So we if you don't mind me not saying a number, it's high enough. The recall is actually good. It's over 90%, but we cannot measure it objectively. Well, and the problem writing this algorithm was mainly with coordination structures. Again, maybe I or maybe we haven't read enough the manuals or something. Maybe there is something that could help us more. As you have said, I didn't know that there is something more than a functor in the dependency tree. So maybe there is something that would help us to extract this information in an easier way, but we just haven't discovered it among the lots of information. Another issue is Clausius extraction, which is crucial for some anaphora resolution algorithms. This is again work of our friend who is not here. But we registered that the clauses are now being annotated separately in the PDT, so they are not even really expected to be extractable from the PDT. So we basically think that it should be possible to extract clauses in a relatively easy way. Problem number 5 is actually just a result of the previous ones. We have found lots of random errors in the annotation. Here we are talking mainly about the analytical layer, to be clear. So we have found by the process of parser development, we have found some random errors, some systematic inconsistencies, for example, in annotation case number unit, like 300 meters. There are inconsistencies in passive verb phrases. For example, the house is built. I will show the examples. There are some inconsistencies in punctuation markup, which is not so important, but they are there. And our very, very rough and very, very previous estimation of error rate on this analytical layer, meaning just the percentage of wrong edges in the tree, is about 5, maybe to 10%. However, this is just some number that was induced or that was based on analysis of several 200 or 300 of sentences. But the analysis was manual, so it's quite confident. Well, now finally to the examples. The first systematic case of inconsistency is annotating number unit. You see here in the same tree, actually in the same constituent, there is 45 years, 45 let, and again 45 years annotated in a completely different way. Well, that might be. I will be happy if you. I would be happy if you. Sorry.
It's the second case and the fourth case, and they are annotated differently for counted objects. Plus, for numbers greater than
sorry.
4.
Which of these tokens are the cases you said? Can you explain more in detail? Because I believe
in Czech, the if you have the numeral in nominative or accusative, then the unit is in genitive. But if you have other cases, then there is agreement. So that's why the annotation is different. This is correct.
Okay, fine. I mean, but what's the difference here?
The accusative because not is a preposition which is with accusative case, and therefore the 45 is an accusative case, but let is in genitive, whereas do is a preposition with genitive in this case, and therefore there is an agreement between 45, which if you pronounce it would be in genitive, and let is also in genitive. Yes, and if there is an agreement, then the noun goes up. And
why?
But this is actually random agreement.
No. It's not random.
When you try to disqualify. Sorry.
Yes, if you
decline.
Decline the whole phrase. Then this word remains in genitive, right?
Well, here it is in genitive, but if you inflect it, if you have the nominative case, then would be 45 will be on top because 45 is in nominative and let will be in genitive, and there is no agreement. So then it is a attribute which is without agreement, and in that case, the noun goes up. And 45 in this case is the noun. It behaves like noun. And let is the attribute, which is in genitive. Like in any other noun modification, which is not adjectival, you have the thing which modifies the noun in genitive.
But you could say the same about this way. You have, if you have a phrase "ministr školství,"
Yes.
And
then
you have genitive.
Mostly would be the right annotation because.
Yes, I know. Yes, I know. But if you have if you had a phrase do ministra školství or
Yes.
something like that, then you would not put školství as the head of the phrase, would you?
No, because školství is in genitive.
But do is a preposition
It's
with
a different
genitive.
structure.
There is a case
but
agreement.
No. But there is a rule in the annotation where if you have an attribute which has an agreement with the noun, then the attribute is the modifier of the noun, meaning that it's down.
Okay.
And that's kind of the main rule, how to annotate noun phrases, right? And if you have an attribute which is not within agreement, meaning that the attribute is a noun or something in genitive case, then that attribute goes down, and it's simply there. It's simply the way that numerals behave in Czech. They simply don't behave like a regular nouns or adjectives. They change this behavior, but if they are in nominative and accusative, so then the syntactic behavior of the numeral is different. We actually spent a lot of time. We actually in one point we had a different rules, but then we found that specifically for syntactic partials it would be actually a problem if just for this case we change it, because this is surface syntax where you simply should have
I
regular
understand.
rules. For
Yes. Maybe it's just our poor linguistic knowledge, but I still feel that this has case agreement just by chance. If you have.
No, it is not by chance. If you change the left subtree by 45 lety, you will see it. Here it is by chance genitive.
Yes, but if you change the right phrase, not 45 lety, this is.
But then of course it's the case with the agreement. But if you use not 45 let, then it's the accusative case. Or if you use 45 let as the subject, then it's all. When it's nominative case, then also you have let will always be in genitive. You never get let in.
Okay.
You cannot count let with anything but 1, 2, 3, and 4 in such a way that it has agreement. If you use any other numerals,
of course.
then of course the numeral behaves like a noun, and then the counted thing is in genitive as a non-agreement.
Yes. But this is this case that here you have.
No.
Both the words are in genitive.
But
here.
both the words are in genitive, but on the left-hand side they are in genitive because the preposition requires genitive, and then there is agreement. But on the right-hand side you have accusative, which requires the noun in genitive simply because it's a non-agreement attribute.
Well,
Okay.
I'm just wondering about your justification regarding the parsers, because, if you say so, if you say so that it would be complicated for your parser to handle the situation differently, I definitely believe you. In our case, it is actually the opposite, and also really our poor intuition says that. If the annotation would be consistent, now I mean that it handles just number unit situations all in the same way, the data would be much easier for our usage. Right?
You would have to really create the parser. It was just an idea when we were doing the data there, because we didn't have any single parser because the data was not there. That if we allow to put, for example, genitives under prepositions, which normally do not require genitives, then we would actually complicate the situation because the parser would have to learn that prepositions, on top of the required case, can always take genitives because numerical expressions you can have anywhere, right? So we would have a parser which would have a very strange distribution of the proper cases which the preposition requires, plus some proportion of genitives, which might not be low because.
Yeah.
So, but of course, I mean, you are right.
I see your point. That's about the statistic cruncher based parser.
Well, always change, because actually this thing is not, because it's systematic, as you said, right? But I don't think it's an error, but it's definitely systematic. You can change it in the data and just
there are also clear errors, as you will see, but
okay, let's close it. Thanks. Yes.
For non-Czech speakers, there is a different annotation for 4 cars and 5 cars. The dependency is opposite. 4 auta, 5 aut. And I just, a question, if you agree or with this case, 4 cars,
yes,
that there is a different...
There is no problem in this, but here you have 45.
So, well, you may... Okay, no, we don't want this to become something like ideological, discussion. So, okay, just information for you is this annotation is at least not clear for us, who are also working in NLP, and perhaps should be more explicitly explained somewhere or something like that. Let's move to another examples. The right way. Well, is this the same case, or do you think this is different?
Yes, that's exactly the same thing.
40 months
is here modified by an attribute, and the attribute is 40 months, right? And 40 months is in genitive. Right? And because it's in genitive, then of course there is an agreement between the numeral and the noun, and in the case of agreement, the numeral goes down. And on the right-hand side, you have the phrase decade of years, which is in accusative, because that's the valency of
no problem with the right-hand side,
right?
yes.
So it's exactly the same case as on the last slide, except that you have a real noun on the right-hand side instead of the numeral, but the rule is the same.
Okay.
Thanks. This might be an error, right? This is opposite. Or not? No. It's still the same, right?
Yes, that's the same thing.
So maybe we haven't discovered as many errors as we thought.
Yes. The best one, but it's a different discussion.
Yeah. That's well. Actually, we will be interested in this discussion, but in the end of the talk. So still the same case, right? This is not visible. There is dožívají 72 let. They live 72 years. Co tam je? Sorry. Můžeš to ještě zvětšit? Well, this will be the similar. Yes, this is again the same case. Yes, and what? Yes, these are taken from 2 different trees. Here is 150 million crowns, and here is.
Because then there is a usual agreement. On the right hand side, I can't tell because I would have to know what is above the 15,026 to say whether it's an error or not.
Well, actually, but this abbreviation can be in any case. Cannot
but it depends what's up there. If there is a preposition, we can tell exactly what the case is. But if there is a verb, right? And if there is a noun, then we know it's a genitive. But without, this is hard to say because you don't see the note above the.
Okay. Yes. I see.
The same case.
Preposition, right?
Yes, there is another problem that this coordination should be dependent on the preposition.
Yeah. So this is an error.
This is an error.
At least one. Yes.
Another probably more serious thing, and maybe you can explain it as well, is in passive verb constructions. There are inconsistencies in how the modal verb is connected with the past participle.
So in this case, the past participle is dependent on this be, and the additional extensions are dependent on this be verb, right? This is the other case that this relation is the same, but the extension is dependent on the past participle. And the third case, the be verb is dependent on the past participle.
Okay, so this is one thing is the modification, this be and something, but what you call the inconsistency in the whether the copula be is on top or whether the passive is on top. That's actually a way of without an additional attribute to determine whether this was a kind of a continuing event or whether it's a state. Now, on the tektogramaticke layer, there is a specific attribute, but here we didn't want to extend because we're going to discover this later that we would need to distinguish it. Maybe we shouldn't have distinguished that at all, because I agree that this is a more semantic distinction, which maybe should not have been there. But since we started, we actually kept it in the data, and the difference is that if the root of the verbal construction is the copula, it actually means it was a state. If you have a passive construction with a copula and a passive form of a verb, then and the copula is on top, is in the root, then it's called a state. Like.
Sorry? This is an error.
This is an error. But
this can be treated as state. Or
so in most cases, I mean, it's not quite clear whether there is a real rule. But in most cases, if you have the verb in a perfective aspect, then it will probably be a state. And in most of those cases, the copula should be the root. But in many other cases, like I think this one actually, even though this has another problem as well, the verb will be on top, which signals that it's a continuing some event which still goes on. And then the copula will simply become an auxiliary verb, like other auxiliary verbs for past tense or something, right? The modification, that's a different story, because in both cases you can either have a rule that the modification should always go on top to the root, because actually the root represents the verb anyway. Even both, if you look at it both ways, in a way it's the root of the verb construction which kind of represents what's going on. Now, of course, this is very difficult to know exactly, but that's always the case, especially if you put the verb with the meaning as a dependent, because then you would like to see all its modifications down there. But this is actually difficult to judge, because, for example, in this case you have here, if let's say it's correct that in the root you have the copula, let's say, then actually if you look at the sentence, then prospective is just a location where this whole thing is describing the subject, whatever was the subject, right?
For adverbials, it was more common to be chart of the copula, and for objects it was more common to depend on the semantic verbs.
On the verb.
Because it's hoppen jeho, but it's therefore it was
But I agree that that might not, the situation with the state and the event type of the verb, that should be consistent. Of course, in individual cases we can argue whether this is a state or not, but it's according to the rules, and that's okay. Now with the modifications, there might be inconsistency because at the time when this was annotated, there was no valency dictionary that would give us some consistent hint whether this is considered to be an object of the verb or whether it's a free modifier, like Jan said, right? So people were guessing, kind of ahead of time, what will happen at the tektogramaticke layer, whether this will be a valency member or not, and if it was a valency member, then it was put as a modifier on the verb, on the real verb, not on the copula. And if they concluded that this will probably be a free modification, not a member of the valency, that then just put it on the root. Okay. But simply because there was nothing to check it against at that time, so I agree that there might be inconsistencies because if no one went back to check all the verbs with the same modification. So I can't say, as opposed to the numbers.
Yes.
This could be, for some verbs, if you today check it against the valency dictionary, it will actually not correspond to the real valency. But otherwise the rule was like Jan said, except that we couldn't really check it. It was really just on the annotators, and they didn't have any kind of background to look at.
So perhaps this might be worth to look at because actually talking about the parser's evaluation, this situation is quite important because the verb has some, say, crucial position in the sentence, and there are a lot of edges that can destroy your results. That just
we can obviously discuss whether this was a reasonable route since we didn't have anything to check it against, right? So I can imagine that in order to be more consistent on this level, not on the tektogramaticke, but here, then we can say, okay, any modification will just go to the root, and then of course we will avoid this problem, but we will have to solve it then 100% when going from this level to the next level. While if this is correct, then we would have less trouble going up. But of course, this is always a question what's better.
Okay, so this is now clear. What did we say about this? This would be a continuous case. Yes. Okay, so now we are.
Sorry for the slides.
This is just an illustration that there are constructions that are simply wrong. I believe that you will not find any explanation of why this should be correct, because there is a coordination on top of the tree. The sentence is: většinu těchto přístrojů lze používat tak, nejen jako fax, ale současně i jako něco. Something. There is a top coordination that coordinates actually lze, the particle lze, and the prepositional phrase or prepositional phrase with jako. I believe that the coordination should be between this jako fax and jako kopírka.
Well, that was not possible because of the word současně. It's not possible to modify coordination of non-verbs by an adverb. So any coordination that is modified by an adverb has to be changed to a coordination of two verbs. And in this case, the verb on the right side is divided, it's missing.
So this
but
is
it's because
this is
there will be no parent for the word současně.
Okay, but what's the intuition behind that? The fact that jako fax is dependent on většinu.
Yes, it's complement. Use something as something. In Czech, it's complement. It's verbal complement. So
why not používat jako fax at least?
There are two. It's dependent on two different words. Complement has two parents, so to say, and the rule for or the solution in our trees was to make the lower of those parents its parent, because the higher can be easily find just by going up and looking for a verb. So each complement that has a noun and verb as its parent, so it, in fact, in the tree bank, its parent is the noun, and you can easily look up to the nearest verb, and it's the second parent of the complement. So again, it's something, you again, here you need the label to find the real relation, but it's because it's not the normal dependency. So normal dependency doesn't work.
This should be done in a consistent way. All complements depend on the noun.
If the noun is present.
If the noun is present.
Anyway, it is another case of us two staring at the tree and saying to us what this is. You know.
I mean, I would say that simply said, I mean, this sentence is actually at the level of this children 0 to 15 column 4, because this is not, this is not a nice Czech sentence. So you can say this is kind of in the gray zone, whether we should ever analyze it.
I would consider
the annotation doesn't tell you much.
But there's a big difference. Whereas I want my parser to be analyzed, such kind of sentences. I absolutely do not want it to be analyzed scores of soccer
football
matches. That's just some chunks of data. I mean, number, colon, number, colon, number, colon, number. That's a one.
It's hard to draw the borderline, because sometimes there is some chess.
I definitely agree with you. It's very hard.
There are just check words, no numbers, not lots of.
It's hard to draw the line.
I mean, you are right, but of course, if you combine some of the more difficult phenomena, like here, actually, what happened is both the coordination, ellipsis, and comparison and complement, then you get a mess like this, because there is no good way to do this. Except that on the tektogramaticke layer, there are some better ways. Some of these things are marked more explicitly, but at this level, it was hard to do. I mean, it's actually there, but you would have to have the labels, which would tell you half of the story, and then you would probably know why.
I don't agree with you that it is a type of technical sentence.
No, it's not a technical sentence, but what I'm saying is that there's some sentences in the real data which are more difficult to analyze. I mean, you don't want to leave out even those, sports tables. They might be very important if you bet, or not. So it's not, it's not unimportant, but I agree it's very far from the language itself. And if you restrict yourself to language, then fine.
Well, you don't really need a statistical parser for matching scores, right? I mean, you need just a word expression.
It depends what you want to do. For some things it's very important, but maybe you will write something different.
Yeah.
But for this sentence is kind of on that's what I said, on the borderline. It still looks like a good sentence, but if you look inside, I mean, this difficult phenomena make it very, very hard, I think, for any type of parser to.
I think in corporate you will find sentences like this that are not football scores. But okay, let's continue. Okay, so thanks for explaining. We were wrong in such many cases. But anyway, I think our main point remains that
there is a problem that the annotation is complex, is quite complex, and for people that are not directly involved in building such tree bank or didn't read the manual about 10 times or something like that, it is quite difficult to understand the structures and to train some NLP tools according to these structures. So well, there is one slide with some outline of possible solutions of these situations. With the error and inconsistencies, we can do some semi-automatic heuristic checks. This is actually what we started to do around 10 hours ago. So it is possible to for example, use some grep or some automatic tools to extract numerals and units, and then you look at the sentences and decide if it's wrong or correct. Also, what can be done is extracting some simpler information that are easier to read for humans, and let the humans decide if it is correct or not. That is quite cheap to do, cheap thing to do. And what to do with the complexity? And now, actually, the discussion starts. If it wouldn't be possible to revise some annotation principles, if it shouldn't be possible to say distinguish somehow between the say usual or well-formed Czech sentences and the technical data like football results, and actually our background and our teachers are teaching us something like verse is better. This is basically because of we are technicians. We are from the technical background, and what we do is actually software development, and this is some kind of law that holds in the software development, that when you do something, when you build a tool, so you are following these priorities in such order. So that means that simplicity is the best value for you. It's whatever you do, it must be simple. Then, if it's simple, it must be consistent. Then it must be correct. And just in case all these three are okay, then you might try to make it complete. So this is really just a start of the discussion. If this would be possible, and if you are willing to say try it, something like this on PDT, maybe this could help to make the resource and the data which are definitely valuable in the tree bank more readable and more usable for say external people. Okay, thanks for attention, and looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you very much for
Here you are.
well, thank you very much for your analysis. I would say I think we can be only grateful to you that you looked at this resource and gave us your opinion and showed us some inconsistencies and things. I think the discussion already somehow started during your talk. And I appreciate very much your effort that you devoted to the analysis. Of course, we can have different opinions. One of the things which somehow I have to remark at the very beginning, but I will leave the word to other people, is that you use the word, or you had a question almost at the very beginning, that you don't know why we selected those sentences. And I would be very much against the word selected, because what we were, I mean, our ambition was from the very, very beginning that we should take texts as they are and try our best to do something about them. Of course, some of these sentences can be marked as such or so, but they are there, they are in the text, and for many purposes you need to take them into account. So actually the first line which you gave there as something which you're supposed to be technical data, I think these were results of sport events. And I mean, and then you have the verb, and for instance, some Czech verb, which its complementation is the numerical result, and then, I mean, you need to have the verb there and to analyze it as such. So I think, yes, you are right. And I mean, we had lot of discussion and headaches. I think these numerical results, that was almost fine, but I remember our discussions over addresses. I mean, what the addresses, that's something which is really unanalyzable, so to say. So that's just to answer your question. We have not, I mean, the ambition was not to select sentences, yes, to have it as they are.
I didn't want to say that you selected sentences if I said so. Sorry for that.
Because I mean, I'm very sensitive to that, because most of the tree banks which were before us, or some, I mean, there were not too many, but those that were, they just had selection of sentences, you know, and that was something which we really, really insisted to avoid. So, no, it's just explanation.
We are actually aware of that in corpus linguistics, one should observe the data, not select or create them. So
yes.
The wording from our side.
Just a short reaction to this. I mean, of course, I think the fact is that you simply have to deal with the data as you found them. I mean, the first thing which we didn't do, because it was done by someone else and we just supposed that it can be repeated, was even to extract the data from the source. I mean, the source could be a PDF, could be a HTML, whatever. And even there, to discover what the real text is difficult, and you want to distinguish. But I think the problem is that of course it's possible to then classify what you get into what is linguistically interesting and annotate that, and leave the rest for some other type of annotation, maybe like information extraction type or something. But then the task, but then you will have the additional task to distinguish which sentences your parser has to handle. You cannot simply select it manually and then test your parser only on those which are good. I mean, you can do it while developing, but then in the end, when you want to evaluate it, it's fine to put this aside, but you have to do it automatically. I mean, you have to distinguish automatically. So it's a question at which level it is best to do this distinction, whether try to parse them first into maybe very artificial structures and then say, oh, but this is very artificial, so this is not this is technical, or whether you want to do it ahead of time. I don't know. So
perhaps something could be done like for example, just identifying the structure that I mean, now in the tree bank annotation, just saying this is an address, and don't create complicated dependency structures on points and columns and numbers and so on.
I agree. I mean, had we believed that we can do this automatically just on the plain data, we would say, okay, it's like sentence breaks, right? You also, when you do annotation, you have to. Yes. You have to rely on the fact that someone or some software can do reliable sentence breaks, because otherwise your parser will have to parse everything together and then decide. That would be actually the correct way to do it in a way, right? But it's impossible technically. So again, this could have been done as well. We just decided let's try to do something, and then and then on top of the dependency links, we didn't have anything how to do the structure. So that's why even addresses and whatever was done.
Do you think that there is a chance that in the future that there could be done something like, say, this chunk is an address, and this chunk is a sequential of football scores, or something like that? it could
I fear
help us
that
very much.
that it's a huge task and a big problem, because sometimes these things can be intermixed together somehow. For example, in case of chess, you have one, I don't know, C3, K5, and then there can be written, this was clever and similar to what Karpov did in, I don't know, 1983. Well, it is a part of a Czech sentence. It's normal
yes,
Czech sentence.
You would have normal dependency tree, but just with markup.
Well, but
this
then
is a sequence of Czech sentences.
Then you have to devise some way how to select just a part of a sentence. There can be several parts of a sentence that some parts of the sentence can be just data and some parts can be linguistically interesting. So it would complicate things. So it's not easy. It's possible, but it's not easy, and it's much more complicated than it might seem on the first sight.
But it should be less complicated
than
annotating the structure.
Yes.
By principle.
Well, we believe
depends
so.
on the rules for annotating the non-interesting data.
Yeah. The annotators definitely have to spend quite some time annotating even such structures.
Well, my second remark, which connects to what has been just said, is that we wanted to, well, that's not a self-defense, it's just a kind of belief. I think that what we tried to do was to have a general resource, I would say. Of course, it depends, I mean, what you really take into account, what you really take from that annotated resource depends on the application, I mean, roughly said, application for which you want to have it. So I think that was another thing which we tried to observe at the very beginning. And I also should add that from the very beginning, and I mean those old timers may remember that the old timer just looking at me, that one of the big issues was whether we should go via this surface layer or whether we should prefer to go right to the tektogramatic layer. And I think you can believe who was on the side of the tektogramatic layer, that was Prazskeho, and that the people who wanted it to start right with something visible were people who were more, I mean, for the surface level. And one colleague who is not here, unfortunately, but he will remember, Sasha Rosen, that we had a discussion over a cup of tea or over dinner at some conference, and when we explained to him, I think Hansa was there, we explained to him the whole scenario, surface level and tektogrammatic layer. Sasha said, oh, and does Prazskeho know about it? So, I mean, you can imagine that the discussion was really, really very hard. And our argument for Peter was, okay, we'll do the surface layer, and from there, we will pass over to the tektogrammatic layer. And I think your example with the number and Jan's explanation of the why it is the head and this one is the attribute and why it's the other way around is a clear example of the difference on the surface level against the tektogrammatic layer. So, I mean, just for you to know that this was, for us, the analytical layer also was supposed to, mainly from the beginning, was supposed to be a step towards the tektogrammatic layer. And maybe some of us, I can point to some people, took the analytical layer more seriously than we did. They took it as something which can be really used for some purpose of parsing. So that was just a historical remark.
One of the reasons was, this was designed in 1995, 2 years after the Pentry Bank was published. So one of the goals was obviously to make it, I mean, we didn't want to follow the phrase structure type of annotation of the Pentry Bank, because this is not a tradition here, just from the linguistic point of view. But on the other hand, we wanted to make it as compatible as possible. You know, just to, for example, do not delete any nodes. You know, rather think about labeling the edges, even though they are not really dependency edges, as you remark correctly, right? There are many types of edges which are, you know, coordination, punctuation, whatever. This is then, of course, all marked at the tektogramatic layer, but here it was just done by means of the labels. But we still wanted to keep it there. And in fact, when we developed the first Czech parser, well, not just us, but in cooperation with some other people who were working on phrase-based statistical parsers, that was actually good, because we could convert this to the phrase structure, you know, very straightforwardly. I mean, not completely, but almost. And then we could train a phrase-based parser and then convert it back. And that way we had the first parser in '98. And without it, if we went directly to tektogrammatic layer, I mean, we won't be able to compare. You know, how well do we do for Czech? We couldn't run any other competitions afterwards. So I would still kind of say that this was a good decision to make this layer. Now, of course, it's a question whether the exact style of the annotation and all these annotation rules are, you know, best at the moment. It can actually appear that now that we have the tektogrammatic layer, and if we can do better parsing to the tektogrammatic layer directly, maybe we can live without it. But it was the basis for us also for the annotation of the tektogrammatic layer. So even if we drop it completely at some future point, and go back to Petr Gal's idea that we don't need this, then it was the experience gained during this annotation that led also to better definitions on the tektogrammatic layer. And I can imagine that going not through this, if you really want to go deep in the analysis, go directly to the, you know, who knows? There might be some method which will be better, you know, marking words which should be deleted and inserting the notes. I don't know. I mean, someone has to pick up this project.
Thank you.
Well, I'm sorry, it's too long, we have to stop. But I only want to repeat what I have said at the very beginning, that I feel really extremely grateful to you that you came, that you showed us your analysis, and that you were so friendly in discussion with us. So thank you very much.
The same for you. Thank you for the invitation and anything.